What's up, guys? Sensible Prepper Live. We're starting on time, actually. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. And we're going to be talking about some things that have been going on and could possibly go on for the next few weeks. Could go on beyond that. But, one of the things about holiday season is there's a lot of people out and there's a lot of celebration. There's a lot of shopping, just events, parades, all kind of different things. And we've seen in Germany and in Australia, just over the past few days. Of course, Brown University, that is also, and when I say terror attack, terror is being a mass shooting situation or whatever. An attack is an attack. And so we're going to talk about it. There are definitely some keys to and some things that relate together. I know that just recently, the LAPD, I believe it was, they had stopped an attack that was being, plotted, and they were able to stop that ahead of time out in California. But there are things that can happen, and we need to be ready. And we're going to talk about some different aspects, mindset, but also a toolkit, and we'll talk about the limitations of that. But before we get started, a big thanks to Exotac for sponsoring today's video. And Exotac makes some of the best fire starters, period. They are just excellent. They're very innovative, very useful, and they're just great tools. Now, why do you need fire tools? Well, it'll boil your water. It cooks your food. It gives you light. It gives you heat. It can keep predators at bay. It just builds good morale. And knowing how to have a fire kit or knowing how to use it and having a fire kit is vital for survival. I mean, it's primal. And you get 20% off using Such20 with the link down below in the description. And we really appreciate Exotac. But whether you go with Exotac or not, guys, have yourself a fire kit. And I don't mean just a standard Bic lighter. They're great, they're convenient, but I love to create fire. I like to make fires. I like to have, outdoors, have a fire pit, whatever. But this is also can be dependent on your survival. Guys, I'll tell you, I've been watching some of the stuff that's been going on, and it's really ramped up this year, especially in Europe. There's a lot of issues they're having with one, they had just an influx of people pouring in that were disrupting the celebration. Now, these were Muslims, and that's just who they were. And they had a Christmas celebration, and so there was a huge disruption. Disruptions are one thing, arguments, having fights or whatever. There's possibility for that. But what we're really going to talk about is when it escalates. Now, again, if you've watched any of the footage from the Bondi Beach in Australia, which could be a holiday event, maybe or not. It was funny. I was talking to somebody the other day about Australia. And they said at Bondi Beach, they said the people are running around. It's summertime there, and because they're on the other side of they're on a different hemisphere, and so it's summertime there. So you have people walking around on the beach with bathing suits on and Santa caps, but it's still that Christmas season, and of course, honestly, Hanukkah, that was the big thing. It was a Hanukkah celebration. These guys, two men, a man and his son, went with bolt action rifles and killed 14 people. How do you stop that, especially in a country that has very strict gun laws and maybe even getting stricter? And how do you defend yourself? And we're actually going to talk a little bit about that as well, because I know, guys, a lot of you, sometimes you're in other countries. So we're not just going to talk about a self-defense measure. We are going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about some things, honestly, that are more important. Listen, you can have a plate carrier on, you can have body armor, you can have all this stuff, and you can still be taken out if you are, number one, unaware of your surroundings. So first, we just want to talk about situational awareness. Now, we talk about this quite a bit, but we need to be especially on our P's and Q's. Now, what is situational awareness? That's where you are aware of your surroundings. You're not paranoid. You're not in fear. You're not, just looking around nervous, thinking something's going to happen, because you don't ever know when something's going to happen. But the one thing about situational awareness is there's a color code, and this kind of helps explain it. You have the white, which means you have no idea. You're just there. You're at a parade, and everything's going great. You have your kids. Y'all were just enjoying it. Oh, there's Santa, and everybody's waving, and you have no awareness of anything that's going on around you except for the guy with the big hat that's blocking the view, and you want to enjoy the moment. Or maybe you're at some kind of Christmas event or Hanukkah event or whatever. You're at some event. Here's the thing, guys. This also applies to regular, just different events where there's a crowd of people. It could be the mall. It could be in a number of places. So first off is just to be aware. So this color code, white, is oblivion. Personally, I stay on yellow, and that just means that I'm aware of what's going on around me. I'm looking around. I happen to see things. I go, okay, take note of that. Didn't know that. Okay, no big deal. I just know what's happening. And I stay off my phone when I'm in public, when I'm in a public area. If I'm going to get on my phone, I want to separate myself. I want to get maybe went back to the wall, sit there, be able to do whatever, but not while I'm just walking around. It's one of the problems, even if, especially for ladies, when you're walking through a parking lot and maybe you're texting and you're unaware of a danger that could be there, whether there's a danger or not. You just have your eyes open. You're just looking. You know that there is a possibility. And so being aware, just looking, observing. And then there's orange. And orange means that you've seen something that's really a threat. You're like, okay, that's a threat. And I want to really keep my eye on that. I want to start thinking ahead, thinking, okay, what are my options? How do I get out of this situation? How do I react to this situation? And you're moving ahead of just that casual observing to actively thinking it through, especially if you're with your family. I mean, the first thing you want to do is start to think about, okay, how do I get my family out of this danger? How do I take care of them? Or, maybe you're by yourself. It's how do I get out of this situation? Or how do I position myself into a better situation? Red is you're on, it's going, things are happening, and you are having to react right then in the moment. One thing is, and this is something that, in fact, I've gotten a lot better at, is if I'm sitting at a gas station, I pull up to the pump, I am on yellow. I'm looking around. I'm aware of what the guy's doing. I'm not nosy. I don't want to see what he's doing, but I'm just aware that there's somebody there, that there are people. If a car pulls up kind of slow, or if there's some kind of something going on, I'm very aware of it because a lot of my friends that are in law enforcement call it stop and robs because convenience stores, gas stations, those are transitional spaces where people come in and out. It's really easy to come in and out. They make it that way. It makes it more appealing. And unfortunately, it makes it more appealing for someone that has a nefarious thought to come in and do something and get out of there quickly. So when you are at a gas station, which is not really an event, but this all applies, I think the big thing is this should be a regular, constant thing, especially if you're the defender, whether you're a dad or whether you're a single mom with kids, is you need to have situational awareness, and honestly, everybody does. Just knowing what's happening. I'll tell you a little story. My wife and daughter and I were downtown, and we were having dinner, and we were parked in this parking area. And so we're walking down this, it's not really an alley, but it was kind of a secluded area. And we get ready and we pull right up to the door, and this van pulls right up in front. And these two guys get out. Well, I'm on orange by that time. I'm thinking, okay, what's going on? I'm not gonna jump over there and hit them, but I'm just kind of like, okay. And then they got out and they got some stuff and they went and they put it in a business. It was fine. But my mind was already working. Okay, what do we need to do? Where do we need to go? Unfortunately, fortunately, we were all carrying. So if those guys would have meant something, it would have been a bad situation. But here's the one problem is when you go into some of these events or there are laws or there are regulations to where sometimes you can't have the means to defend yourself. So you need to make sure that you're aware of that. I'm just going to put it that way. Now, so first thing is, let's say that we're somewhere and there's an event. Oh, and let me stop here just real quick. If you have questions, and it doesn't have to be related to this specifically, But if you have prepper related questions, you can leave them at any time. Sarah Mack's over there and she's monitoring it. So you can leave those questions and we'll take a break in a few minutes. So observe. So let's say that I'm at a parade, which or an event, some kind of market event for Christmas. Guys, Christmas is the time where it's peace and love and you're shopping and you're out and you're enjoying yourself and you got you some hot cocoa or for me, a good cup of coffee and I'm enjoying the evening. And we go to these events. We'll be going to one coming up. You're in the mode of festive, joyous celebration. In the back of your mind, you need to have I'm watching what's going on. We're in public, where there's a crowd of people around, and I'm watching. So first off is observe. And when you observe, you may see potential threats. If there is something that's going on, it's just your gut. You're like, why is that guy acting like that? What is he doing? So first off is to observe and to go, okay, mean, there's no reason to act, but I have made note. I have observed. I see what's going on. I'm good. Right after 9/11, I was flying to New York. Was in the airport. We were waiting on the flight. There was a guy that just kept getting up, sitting down, getting up. And he was speaking Arabic, which right after 9/11, that became a real hot spot. And people in that area got nervous. The guy just kept going, and he was acting kind of erratic. And I actually went over and sat down beside him. Now, maybe that wasn't too smart, but I just thought, fine, I'm going to sit right here because I don't know what he's doing, but he needs to calm down. He's making people nervous. And he did. Now, I could have put myself in danger by doing that, but I was observing and I was positioning myself. And so when you observe something that's going on, if you see and you're like, what are those guys doing? Why are they doing that? Then position yourself. And what I mean by that is if you see maybe a potential area that would be a target in front of you, then you get yourself in a position outside of that zone. Now, that's going to take some thinking, and definitely it's not every situation, but getting yourself in a good position. You're not doing anything, you're not even threatening. You're just getting yourself out of the line of fire, really. And we'll talk about different terror attacks too, because it's surprising, and when we'll go into that on what to expect. And so, what happened at Bondi Beach is not normal. That was something that was really actually a very unusual thing, mainly because of the gun laws. But the first thing you want to do is make sure your family is safe. So what I like to do is, if I'm in a certain area, I will look around. I will look for ways of escape. What's the best way to get us out of danger? Where can we move? And I want to take my family and maybe even other people, bystanders, and say, hey, let's go this way and get my family out of the situation first. And that is going to be important. You want to protect your family. And so observe, position. It may not be the best spot for you to see what you want to see, but at least you're more safe and you're careful. Now, again, you can't be paranoid and you're going around. It's going to really ruin the season, especially if you tell your kids, watch out, there may be something going on. Let them enjoy it, but keep a watchful eye and observe. And then when if you find a potential threat, if you're kind of going, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is. And maybe they're just a little nuts, but I'm going to watch them. And it's important. And so then actually avoid that area. If you've got somebody going on, and listen, guys, especially men, we get a little bit of a vibrato going and we're like, well, you ain't gonna tell me what to do, and kind of get that going. Listen, if you have your family with you, get out of that situation. Keep your temper cool. Keep your head on your shoulders. Keep your head on a swivel. And that means you know what's going on around you. But it's really important not to lose sight. One thing that happens and really can escalate things is for somebody to start that back and forth. One of the things that I heard this a few years ago, and it said, improve your communication skills. Now, that doesn't mean with a ham radio or some kind of radio. It means to improve your attitude. So when you're dealing with situations, you have a better attitude and you're trying to diffuse the situation, whatever it is. So diffusing the situation. I remember one time I was in a big event. This was up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was the Riverbend Festival, and it was huge, and it's a lot of fun. We're there, it's packed out. All of a sudden, the crowd just opens up, and there are these two guys kicking a man who is on the ground. And the man was an elderly man. The other guys were probably in their 30s, and they're like just kicking him. Well, for me, sometimes I have a very defense mechanism where I defend people. I always have, and I've been in many situations where it's gotten me in more hot water than. But it's just the way I am. And so the first thing I did was I started running toward him, yelling, and my father-in-law grabbed my arm. And then somebody looked back and said, "Hey, that guy deserved it. He was really harassing those two guys." And I thought, okay, I don't want to get myself in a bad situation, but so you've got to keep a cool head. You've got to be observing. You need to know all the facts before you jump in on the wrong side. And that's one thing I think that the German government and British government lately have been doing. They're jumping in on the wrong side. So we need to protect those around us. Whatever the cause, whatever it is, when violence starts, you need to be on the side of nonviolence until, and we'll get to that in a second. So, what are the events? Well, you have your holiday events, which are parades. You have, different gatherings. Church is another place, and that's one place you want to have some situational awareness in, because churches can be targeted. We have. We've had a number of those incidences here in the U.S., but also in other parts of the world. And so being aware, knowing that if something starts happening, again, all of these things apply. Observation, knowing what's going on, those are very important, no matter where you are, any event. Because at the mall, and the mall's another one, you're at the mall, you're shopping, you're having fun, all of a sudden, and we've seen it over and over, where somebody it's a target rich environment for any kind of terror. And sometimes that terror is not necessarily Islamic based, which, is the one that we think about a lot of times, is that it can be just some crazy guy. And so, and when I say Islamic based, I think, and from what I understand, the Bondi Beach, the guy that stopped that was Muslim. So I don't want to throw everybody under the bus, but we need to observe things. Okay, we're going to go to some questions here in just a second. I want to give Sarah Mack a little bit of a heads up. But before we do, we're going to talk about trauma kits. So the first thing is again, get yourself out of the danger zone. Maybe you're still in the area, but you're away from something that may be staring up that you can see. Get yourself out of that zone. Take care of your family, protect them. Be very observant. Then having some kind of medical treatment, and trauma kits are great. And a lot of times they make some really cool ones to where you can carry them on your person. So I can have an ankle rig. I can have some that are in pockets in my jacket pocket. I can have a tourniquet. I can have some chest seals, whatever. I can have my regular tourniquet or trauma kit set up, and I can have it on me. And that way, because if someone's injured, especially if it's your family member, you are really going to want to have some medical way to treat them if something were to happen. And just like this situation at Bondi or in the German market, same thing. So make sure that you have a trauma kit. And guys, I want to encourage you to take classes. The one thing about trauma kits, and I've seen a lot of guys, they'll have their trauma kits, they're ready to go, but they have no idea really how to use them. And they think maybe I'm just going to open it up and use it. Recently, I was at a class where we were at this big range and they set up these pumps. And these girls went out on the range and then started yelling and crying out. And so we had teams of two. We would run up to them. They had these pumps that were just pumping out red liquid. I mean, it was it was really gut wrenching, because you're like, oh my gosh. And we had to pull out our tourniquets and get that stopped. And I'll tell you, if you don't have any training and you're just going, oh, how does this even work? You need to know, you need to have some training. And if nothing else, at least watch online courses and get some ideas. But there's nothing more that's better than having some hands-on experience. Okay, let's go to some questions.
Paige V says, where do you think is the best part of the country for preppers to move if they are able? What are the main factors you should consider when choosing where you're going to live?
That's a good question. First off, is any state with a major city avoid? And when I say major city, I'm talking about Detroit or New York or Chicago. But the problem is that city runs the entire state. So you need, and typically in those areas, there are very restricting laws that encroach upon our personal freedoms, and a lot of that they accept because they live in this close together area, and they're very dependent. So first off is the state that doesn't have a major city that controls the state. Secondly is a state that has pretty conservative values and laws. So if a state has an excellent concealed carry freedom, whether you carry or not, that's a good state to be in because it gives you the freedom for self-defense. But even more importantly, and this is like in our area, our local law enforcement is good and they don't pander. And if you break the law, you're arrested. And so, the one thing about it a lot of times in the bigger cities is just that catch and release, really, pretty much. They take them in and they book them and then they let them go again. And then they have 32 outstanding warrants. And then you wonder why something happened. So, um, because there's no incentive not to. But having a good conservative, and when I say conservative, I mean someone that protects your freedoms as American citizens. There's a number of states that are like that, and you just have to find the area that you want to live in. Where I live in Greenville, South Carolina, we are having masses amount of people moving here. And the good thing is those people are escaping other areas. Hopefully, they're not bringing the same ideals that they left that caused the problem in the first place. Tennessee is a big place where a lot of people are moving. Florida is a big place. South Carolina is one of the biggest. I mean, people are moving into this whole state in droves. Hopefully, and all the ones that I've already met over a period of time have seemed to be predominantly people that are looking for getting out of what they had and getting into something that has some freedom. Texas, great place. And so states like that that have some conservative laws. The problem with Texas, though, is that there's some bigger cities there that are kind of swaying things. But if you're moving there, maybe you'll make a difference. But yeah, I think that's the number one is looking for a state with not major, and I mean major cities. And then secondly, finding a place that has really good conservative laws, specifically toward firearm and freedom. And that'll give you a basis for the other laws that they have. So those are two major criteria. And then just if you like that area and if it's growing. So those are my two things.
Tadbit Tech says, you mentioned last week about solar panel batteries in vehicles. From experience, do not leave it on the dash unattended. I have seen them swell up, and after that, they're going to pop and burn down your car.
Yeah. Yeah. Be careful. I mean, any electronics, you want to keep them in, where they're not directly into the sun. Even my cell phone, if I have a little holder and if I'm in the sun too, if it's too much of a direct sunlight, it will take my phone and it'll say too hot, too warm. But yeah, solar panels and things like that can be a problem. So thank you for mentioning that. But you'll want to keep it out there where you can charge and you want to get the sun. But too much of a good thing can be a problem. So good point.
Sis Clark says there's also black in Cooper's color code where it's a catastrophic mental breakdown where you don't react.
Thank you for bringing that up. One of the things that happens a lot of times when somebody that has no experience is attacked. We live in a very sheltered world. So when some of these things happen, it's not like they just happen all the time. On your daily life, the chances of that happening can be very slim. So we get into this mode of everything's fine. And we take martial arts, and one of the things that our sensei has done is he'll do these classes. And he talks about this is when he walks out in these women classes for self-defense. And when somebody grabs him by the neck, the first thing they do is to go, "Ah," they just freak. And that's pretty much what it is. It's just a freak out. And he's helping train them that if that happens, to react. So the big thing is if you're thinking about it already, if you are in that yellow, even if you're in yellow, you're more out to react in a more positive way instead of just freezing, freaking out, and just screaming and standing there. There's a lot of instances where something traumatic is happening around them. Maybe it's an active shooter situation and people are just standing there. They don't even, they freeze up, or they get into a ball and they sit there and they go, "Ooh," and then before long, they're one of the targets. So good point. Black is just, and that's the one thing about this whole, what we're talking about is use your mind, use it well. It's a bad situation. Get yourself out, not stop and go, I'm in my happy place. I'm in my happy place, because that happy place isn't going to shelter you. So being ready to move and to act. And that is really everything that we're talking about, is acting and having a thought and a plan of how to get out of it. Okay. We'll come back to some questions in a minute because we want to keep going. So situational awareness, trauma kit. Let's talk about different events and situations. Well, let's talk about self-defense. Self-defense, that may or may not be a possibility. And when I say that, I mean, it's always a possibility for self-defense. Your tools may differ. Here is your number one self-defense. The tools I have can make it more effective in certain situations, but maybe not. So first off, let's look at some of the threats. So, of course, a lot of people think bombs. A lot of people think guns. That can be a situation. I read this. They did this study in Germany. They've had a lot of terror attacks, a lot. Some of them get in the news, some of them don't. But it was like one after the other, after the other, after the other. Most of the attacks, in fact, overwhelmingly, the attacks were with a knife. Now, one thing in Germany is they have pretty strict gun laws, so you're not going to be able to get firearms quite as readily. But number one, knives. Knives are going to be hard to defend against. So that's where it really becomes important that you're watching people's actions. If they're acting weird, if they're acting funny, if they're acting like they're not really a part of what's going on there. Because if you're thinking about, okay, I'm gonna stab some people, you're acting a little weird. I don't care who you are, hopefully. And then all of a sudden they pull it out and they start stabbing. That to me is one of the most difficult to ascertain or defend against. Now, it's real funny, oh, you brought a knife to a gunfight. If you've ever watched any of the Israeli training forces when they are doing attacks against knives, it will shock you. The guy comes in, he has a knife, the guy has a gun, and the guy with the knife, like 90% of the time, gets to the guy with the gun before he can draw it or even fire, or even if he has it out. I believe it's the Tueller effect. We did this at Tactical Response, where we did some training to where a guy standing there, he's running to you. He's actually running aside from you, so it's safe. But he is running, and you've got to draw as soon as he starts running, and he's over here. As soon as he starts running, you've got to draw your firearm, fire, and pull the trigger. And almost every time they were past where you were standing. So, and then it takes a moment, and I knew that this guy was going to do this. I mean, I was prepared for it. If you're not prepared and you're standing there and somebody just comes running up to you with a knife, you may have a concealed carry. You may have a 50 BMG and you're not going to be able to get to deploy it necessarily in time. Now, that's usually a targeted attack going straight for someone. It's more of an assassination. Sometimes people pull them out and they just start stabbing. But don't think that just because you have a firearm on you, concealed carry, that you're invincible, because you're not. Plus, a lot of the second mode of attack is a vehicle. Vehicles, people ramming them through. That's what happened in Germany recently, and that's happened in France. It's happened all over. It happened in the U.S. where someone just took a vehicle and just drove right through the barricades and just went straight down through the parade or whatever, or event. Very difficult to ascertain that as well, because you're sitting there, you and your family, and then all of a sudden this car comes flying through. You think about this. If you're not already kind of in a mental state of, I want to know what's going on, you are going to be completely blinded by that. But if I'm already kind of looking around, I'm in yellow, maybe even in orange, if there's something going on, and I'm kind of aware, then when that happens, my reaction time is going to be much faster, because I'm already like, "Oh, here it comes. Get out, and move out of the way." So reaction times, that is one thing about having situational awareness, is it's going to put your reaction time much quicker. Now, again, not paranoid, not whatever, but if something happens, you're going, okay, I was already looking and now I see, now I react. If you're in the black or you're in the white, you're just, oh yeah. Then something happens, you go, what's that? And the next thing you know, you're mowed down by a vehicle. So stabbing first, vehicle second. Now, bombs are one thing, usually some kind of homemade bomb. They're not typically super effective, but they can be. So having some kind of bomb. So first thing is for me, if I'm somewhere and we're at an event and there's a mailbox, one of those where you put your mail in, I'm not gonna stand there. Or if it's something else, or if there's a bag sitting there by itself, unattended, we've all heard that one. Just I'm gonna avoid that. I'm gonna step away from that. I want my family to be somewhere where it's a little more, just not that kind of stuff. Places that are potentials. You know what, guys? It takes a little bit of thinking it out. And if you are the defender, that is really your job. You're the father, you're the mother. Whether you're the father and the mother, you should both kind of be thinking. Let your kids have a great time, but be aware of what's going on. So, bombs, well, how about drones? There was a drone attack where somebody took a drone, they had an explosive on it, they went by and they detonated it in an event. I think there was only one that's happened at, and it happened in Germany. Stabbings, okay, arson, Molotov cocktail, just lighting up the place. And that's probably a very simple thing to do without you having to carry a lot. Just carry a big lighter. Hopefully not hopefully, but maybe it won't work. But, you can start a fire and then start a panic, and then you have a stampede, and then people get hurt. So there are a number of different attack situations, and so you just need to be cognizant. And again, guys, you can't walk around living your life in a state of paranoia, but you sure as heck have a responsibility to protect your family and to protect your own life. So again, self-defense, you may or may not be able to carry. A lot of events, especially paid events, you're not here in South Carolina. You're prohibited in an event to carry. You're prohibited. You're restricted. So you have to decide for yourself. Firearm, knife, one that I really like, and I have gotten more and more to like it ever since the BLM, the Antifa, all that stuff that happened, is pepper spray, especially in a large group situation. The one thing you have to be aware of is that if you draw your firearm and the perpetrator might be right there in front of you and you may stop him, but who knows what's behind him. And so it's very important, because one of the things about it, once you pull that trigger, there's no amount of praying that's going to pull that bullet back. It's gone. So you need to be very aware of what's going on. I know in New York a while back, there was some guy and he was doing something and these cops shot him and shot 3 people behind him. So, it can be very dangerous. So pepper spray, that's one of my favorites. I just like pepper spray. But again, it's according to what country you're in. I know that a lot of places you can't carry pepper spray. When you really think about it, your right for self-defense, it's a basic human right. You should, and there's no reason, there is nothing you can do to me that is going to keep me from protecting my own life. So I go to jail. So I'm fine. So this, so that, whatever. But the basic thing is if not, I'm dead. So what are the options? Self-defense is a basic human right. One of the things, though, that I really want to warn you about, and I see this, and probably because of social media, we get this in our brain. When you watch something and you have someone that is driving down the road and somebody cuts them off and they are legal concealed carry holder. They've never broken the law before, but for some reason, some people, when they are carrying, they lose their mind. And so this guy fires off a few rounds at the car just because they cut him off. Keep a cool head. Listen, if you are concealed carrying, you have a major responsibility when you're carrying that weapon, not just to the law, but unto God. Have some discipline in your life. You do not pull that out unless your life is actually currently threatened. Now, if a guy is ramming his car into you over and over and you're about to go off a bridge, that's a little different, but make sure. One thing here in South Carolina is part of the law, the self-defense law, is that you have the right for self-defense. We also have a stand your ground. If somebody in the castle doctrine, if somebody comes in my home, that's on them now. But here's the problem. If you are in let's say a road rage situation, or you're out in your yard and somebody's fussing and you're having an argument, if you escalate it, so let's say someone cuts you off and you're mad and you get right up on their bumper and you're riding their bumper and you're following them, you have just negated your right to use that firearm in self-defense to a court of law. So think about it when you are on the road, because road rage sometimes can get out of hand. If you allow that and you escalate it, then you are making it much harder on you in court to justify what you've done. Same thing in a situation. If you see something going on and you misinterpret it, you don't want to draw that firearm, and then you got to face civil, legal, criminal. You need to have your mind in the right place, and you have discipline, and you need to respect it. I remember when I was a young man, and here in South Carolina, you can be 18 and have a firearm in your vehicle. You can't, you can possess it. It's for self-defense. And I remember when I first got it, I put it in my car, and it was a little 38 revolver, and it sat in my glove box because that's where it was supposed to go while you're driving. It gave me a huge respect. I had a lot less agitation when people cut me off, when people were being ugly, when people are being stupid, because I looked at that and I said, that is a massive responsibility, and I have the power to take life. And I don't want to do that, and I don't want to put myself in that situation. But if I have to, I have my tool that I need. So you really need to think about it that way, guys. If you're concealed carrying, you shouldn't be cocky about it. In fact, you should be a little humbled by it, because you have the power of life and death sitting on your hip, and you need to be serious about it. But you have the power of life and death on your hip. And if you need to protect and guard and protect your own life or those around you, then you're going to have the ability to do so. So self-defense again, and that you may or may not be able, you may have to adjust your self-defense options. Sometimes you can improvise. You can pick up a rock. You can pick up a stick. You can pick up a trash can. You can knock them over the head with it. You can come up behind them. Self-defense can also be just physical. So, and we saw that with the guy at the Bondi Beach. He ran up, got behind the guy, and got the gun from him. Now, this is the other part. Resistance is important, whether you have any means of self-defense, because you do have your physical body. You can assist to stop things if possible. Flee first if you can. But if you're in that situation and it's going on, stop the threat, resist, fight back. Don't stop fighting. Stop the attack. The one thing about Bondi Beach is when the guy got the gun and he held it on the perpetrator and he just stood there and held it, he got shot twice by the other guy. So you are putting yourself at risk. Let me just say this. In a situation where you're saving lives, sometimes you put their lives above your own. That's the right thing to do. Is it what we want? No. But is it the right thing to do? Yes. Don't let people do whatever, and then you don't take action if you are in a position to take action. At least morally, that is the right way to go. I mean, I think Christ himself said there's no greater love than a man who will lay down his life for his friends. Again, do we want to do that? No. But we have to decide. If you're going to step in and you're going to resist, you're putting yourself at danger. But it's a very high moral action. Okay, now, number 5. This is, of course, having law enforcement around is good. And having law enforcement is a deterrent. It's great to have. And you want to know where your law enforcement is in a situation. If you're going into a festival event, kind of have an idea of, okay, the police are standing right over there. Now, that gives you a couple of things. It's a better area to be in, number 1. Number 2, help is faster. But also, if you need to, if something starts going down, then call 911 or alert the authorities immediately. Or even if you have suspicions, somebody is doing something and it's just weird. It's just, I don't know that it's dangerous. It's just weird. And you might want to go over to law enforcement and say, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm not paranoid, or I'm not trying to cause problems, but there's something kind of strange. You might just want to kind of observe that a little bit. And law enforcement, they can observe just like we talked about. They're under the same rules as we are. They just have more of a vow, an oath to protect. And that's a good thing. So make sure that if something is going on, is to alert authorities as soon as you can. And like at Bondi Beach, it still took them forever to get down there, which is kind of sad. They didn't have some kind of security around there, but it is Australia. And it was really sad because they've recently and over the past few years have just made a massive push for gun control, gun control, gun control. And now they're calling even for a bigger push. Gun control does not work. What gun control does is it takes away law-abiding citizens' ability to protect themselves and protect their families. So you may not like to have a gun. You may be scared of guns. A lot of times people that don't have a lot of experience with guns, they kind of go, ooh, what's a gun? Ooh. Let me just encourage you to do this. Find someone you know that likes guns. They will be more than happy to take you out or go to a shooting range and say, hey, I just want to shoot. I never have. I have a fear. I want to overcome it. Let them take a little 22 and just shoot the 22. You'll be surprised at how much you'll be like, well, that was a lot of fun. And then it takes away the fear. Also, the one thing is like with our kids, we have 3 kids. They grew up with guns, loaded guns in the house. Yeah, we had them locked. We had some locked down. We had some that weren't locked down. We just did because that's just the way we are. But I trained my kids from a very early age to where they knew, and I would take them out and when they were young and we would shoot, and then they lost the curiosity as much. So if they saw something sitting there, they had a lot more responsibility. Now, when they were really tiny, no, we had them put up where they couldn't get to them. But I'll never forget, my son came in one day and he was young and he looked and he said, Dad, is that a CZ75? Because he plays video games. And I said, yeah. And so he picked it up, dropped the magazine, checked the chamber, kept his finger out of the trigger. And I thought, that is the way that we need to do, is to teach our children about safe handling and really just not touching them, especially when they're young, and then not without you. But again, guns can be very, and I say this, I know most of the people watching this probably have guns and they like to shoot and they're self-defense, but there are those who are curious that are looking, or maybe you are a prepper, but you're like, oh, guns. Guns help us. They give us a very effective defense, self-defense. And that's what it is self-defense, to where we can protect ourselves, our families, and our property. And if you've worked yourself hard, that is a very important part, is to protect your property. Okay, if we have some questions, we'll go to those.
Halloween Freak says, I carry a tourniquet, Israeli bandages, and chest seals with me everywhere I go in my purse.
That's good. That is smart. I mean, that's life-saving. And you know what? That's just good. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, because somebody else could need that, not just necessarily somebody you care about.
Ken Garrett says, is there a particular time that SHTF would happen over other times?
Down through history, when you look at history in general, it typically is led up to. The only thing that I could think that would be an SHTF moment immediately is an EMP. And that means that a nuclear device has been detonated over the atmosphere. It doesn't harm anyone on the ground, but when it goes off, it puts out an electromagnetic pulse and it can disable. In fact, they've done studies, the US government's done studies to where an effective EMP can disable 70% of our power grid. That is catastrophic. And the things that we enjoy, like flipping on the lights, starting our car, turning on our cell phone, whatever, is going to be completely ended, stopped right then. Now, there's also sun flares and the coronal mass ejection, where, in fact, there's one right now that's one of the largest sunspots, and it's a solar flare, and they'll go off. They'll just bubble up, and they'll. Now, if the Earth was in that path, and I think it was the Keratin event that happened in the 1800s, where it burned up all the telegraph lines because this energy did it. That could also happen. Other than that, even a disaster, a major natural disaster, people typically just come together. They just come together, they help each other, and there's people that can come in. But let's look at maybe an economic situation, economic meltdown. I mean, we're seeing gold and silver going to unbelievable record numbers, both gold and silver. Silver's really taken a jump up to about $64 an ounce. I bought a lot of my silver at $5 an ounce, and it just keeps going up. So, that means that our dollar is going down. One thing too that, economic though, it's usually a process. It's different factors happen. Civil War, the American Civil War, it took a number of years for it to finally get to the boiling point. And then but it gave us a lot of, maybe some kind of pandemic that, not like COVID as much, but something that was really catastrophic, like influenza used to be. One of the things my grandmother told me a number of years ago, and now she's passed away a number of years ago as well, but she lived through the Great Depression. And one of the things she said is back then, number one, we didn't know we were poor. And then when the Great Depression hit, it was like about the same thing, except, people did suffer more. But she said the thing that scares her now more than ever is that people back then, they took care of their neighbor. They cared about people. They treated their neighbors well. Said today, people are so selfish. She goes, I'm really concerned that if something like that were to happen, it would be really bad. So, but to say, here's the thing, down in Argentina, they had a major collapse. In fact, I've got the book. In fact, I didn't bring it out, but the Modern Survival Guide for the Coming Economic Collapse. And it was about actual events in Argentina. And I do have the book listed down below in the description because so many people have bought it. But he said, the thing is the police will not be there to save you, but they'll be there to arrest you. And typically you're going to have a power vacuum, whether it's the U.S. government or state and county governments. They're going to come together and they're going to form some kind of authority, which they need to, because, thinking about a zombie apocalypse is really kind of like way out there. There'll be somebody that'll fill the void pretty quickly. That's my opinion.
DZ Wren says, question, what would be a bare minimum set of equipment to keep with you when you go to holiday events? I'm looking to be as gray as possible.
What's up, DZ? I really appreciate your comments. Let me tell you what I did. So we went up to Virginia, to Richmond, Virginia. They had a big Second Amendment rally because the governor there was a nut job and he was wanting to pass all these gun laws. So we had like thousands of people go up there. And there was a threat maybe of Antifa being there, which Antifa ended up going, no, we like the Second Amendment too. So they didn't cause any problems. But when I went, I took a waist pack. And in that waist pack, I had a tourniquet. I had just a very minimal trauma kit. I had my firearm in there. I had some, and I actually had another one on my hip, but I had a firearm in there with an extra magazine. And then I had some zip ties, some heavy duty zip ties, just a couple in case we needed them. And, you can expand that out to a knife or a multi tool or whatever, a flashlight. Of course, I carry a lot of that stuff on me already, but I wanted to have something a little extra. And so, in fact, I think I carried 2 tourniquets. So while I was out, and it was a very low profile, so I like that. Now, for me, and if you have like cargo pockets, you could put a trauma kit in there. You could carry. I mean, like for me, I carry on my belt. I have my in my pockets, my flashlight, my knife, of course, my keys and all that stuff, and then I have my firearm with me. And the one thing I would bump it up to is definitely having a trauma kit. I think that would give you the bonus. So, but the flashlight, it could be at night. You could need it, and one could go out. So having maybe an extra flashlight would be a smart move. And let me say this. I did a video recently, it's been a while back, about my upgraded EDC for terror, because this is when Iran, we did all those bombings in Iran. And one of the things I said is while I've been carrying the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0, it's in 380 ACP. It still has 10 rounds or 12 rounds, so it's capable. But if I'm going to an event, I'm going to up my game a little bit. I mean, I'm going to stay discreet, but I'm going to move it up to 9mm, and I'll move it up to a higher round capacity. So that's that.
Railroad Rumor says, was something artificially holding back the price of silver based on the recent run up?
Well, Mr. Travis, good to hear from you. Yeah, we have questioned that for a while. We've watched silver we felt like it was being depressed artificially. The one thing about silver is that it's used in industry. It's used in the medical industry. It's used in the electronics. I mean, there's a lot of things about silver. It's highly conductive, and it's just really pure metal. So I think that there has been, but sometimes, and it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people and experts on this. And if you watch people that are experts on precious metals, they all have different opinions about it. So not really sure, but I've always kind of suspected that. And then with gold, gold's up to like $4,300 an ounce. Years ago when I started buying gold, it was $300 an ounce. So let me mention this about precious metals, because and if you, I think I forgot to put the link down, but ITM Trading, they are great. They've been in business for 30 years, and they will just give you consulting on what you should do and what's good to buy right now. And they are experts. They've been in business again 30 years. And if you, again, I didn't put the link down, but if you tell them Suit sent you, they'll even be nicer to you. The one thing about gold and silver, and a lot of people have questioned it. They're like, well, my precious metals are, brass, lead, and copper, which I understand, mine too. But one of the things to remember is, like, during the Great Depression, a lot of people lost their jobs, they became unemployed, but they still owned a house and they lived in the house. And after a while, the banks came and said, hey, you got to pay your mortgage. And they're like, I don't have a job. They lost their house. Thousands, if not millions of people were foreclosed on and evicted from their homes. If you're putting together silver and gold, you have a wealth. You're protecting your wealth. And you can use that to pay your property tax. You can pay it for whatever. You can take it and you can use it because you have worked hard. Your wealth, your time, your investments have worked very hard, and you don't want to lose that over just whatever. Another thing is, if you are having to bug out, and it's one of the things that's very prevalent, a lot of people have, and you should have a bug out plan, because you never know, your house could catch on fire, it could be taken over, people could come in, whatever. Having gold and silver, or either one, and this is portable wealth. So if I have to leave my home and all I've got are the supplies that I put in the back of my car, and I go to my brother-in-law's because it's a safer area and I live with them, or we do whatever, I'm poor. I'm dirt poor. If I have stored up some gold and silver and ore, then I have a way to start again. A lot of times this is just a protection. It's not necessarily an investment. And if the central banks all over the world and the countries of this world are buying up gold in record value, I mean, in record numbers, I think that I should be on that same bandwagon. I just can't buy it in record numbers, but I can buy what I can. And if you don't have a lot, silver is a great way to start. Just throwing that out there.
Beatus6733 says, how many languages do you speak?
Dos. And the second one is un poquito. But of course, obviously, my English is not all that great either. But my Spanish was really good when I worked. It's funny. I was a VP of sales for this company, and we had a lot of Hispanic people working there. And my Spanish became really good, really good. And then that was 20 years ago. So now it's a little rusty. But yeah, that's it.
Braden Sexton 1362 asked, would you ever consider doing a live on 72-hour kits for specific SHTF events? I live where earthquakes are prominent, but find it hard to find info on kits specific to an earthquake event.
Earthquake event. That'd be interesting. Because that can actually disrupt your transportation even of getting out of an area. Yeah, we do some things on kits at times, and a 72-hour bug out. We did one recently. It's been a few months ago where we talked about get home bags, but maybe a good bug out bag. That'd be fun. And I like to bring all my stuff out when I do that so we can look at it and talk about it, show and tell. But we'll put that on the list. Thank you.
Skelenuts ask, I bought a Mossberg Flex tactical shotty with a pistol grip option to make it easier to conceal. Pistols are way harder to get in my area. Your thoughts?
It's funny. I was looking at Mossberg shotguns just recently, and I saw a kit that has it's the full stock, but you can put the pistol grip on it. And that is, you need to get out and practice with it to get good at it, because a lot of times you see in the movies, these guys, but get some practice with it because it does shoot a little differently. It's kind of like the Mossberg Shockwave, which, is kind of it's just called a fire. It's a weapon. It's not, or a firearm. It's not even classified as a pistol or a shotgun. And you can get it pretty small, but the Cruiser with that pistol grip, I've had a number of those over the years, and they're easy to conceal. Shotguns are very devastating up close and personal, especially. It's a fantastic weapon. And Mossberg makes good shotguns. So I think that the biggest thing, my advice to you first, is to put that pistol grip on it, take it out to the range, and shoot a number of different loads, including buckshot, and see how it functions. It will handle differently because obviously you're putting it on your shoulder and you have more stability and you're able to accept the recoil. When you do this, you just got to be careful. And plus you don't want to bust your teeth out. So put it out there a little bit. But I think that especially if handguns are an issue, it's one of those things, guys, where you have to adapt, and that there are tools out there to adapt. Just like in Australia with those guys in Bondi Beach. I mean, they took 2 bolt action rifles and they did a devastating, horrible, despicable act. And but the thing is where there's a will, there's a way. So I like that. That's like for me, like a lot of places, sometimes they have the assault weapons or restrictions on ARs and all that stuff. To me, a good lever action rifle is very fast. Yeah, it's not like an AR-15, but man, it's fast. And then now you can get them even with the detachable magazine. The Henry Supreme is a great option for that. And you can get your AR mags and you can pump that thing out.
Elena Breck says, question, will self-defense training may help avoid having to use a weapon, or are they not that connected?
No, definitely it is. I mean, for me personally, and I've trained in martial arts since I was about 12. Hands-on, being able to handle yourself, having the confidence to do that, and it gives you a different mindset. So even if you have a firearm, obviously firearms, it's like the old saying, when you have a hammer, everything's a nail. When you have a firearm, you got to be careful because everything is like, okay, that's the solution. That's not a good solution in most cases. So the other thing about it is even if you need to draw your firearm, a physical altercation can happen before that. And you need to be able to have some ability to push off, to restrain, to get to whatever, manipulate, so you can get to your firearm, because you may be in a situation to where you can't get to it and you need to be able to have physical hands on. So to me, self-defense, especially like classes, they're not the end all, and they're not going to make you Bruce Lee, but they sure as heck are going to give you a little different mindset. And that is the big key. That is your number one survival tool, is your mind. So the other tools, are great, and you need those tools, but you can still do it. And again, just like we talked about with these ladies that were like, they would freeze up. This will help you to overcome that. It'll help you to overcome it. So yes, Elena, I think we need to have a little bit of both, for sure. Okay, it's 1:00, guys. Big thanks to Exotac for sponsoring today's episode. You get 20% off using Suits20 with the link down below in the description. You need a fire kit. It'll boil your water, cook your food, give you heat, give you light, keep predators at bay, and it builds good morale. And Exotac makes great fire starting. But whether you go with Exotac or not, as I always say, have yourself a fire kit. And I just want to, since we brought it in, ITM Trading, guys, check it out. They have a great YouTube channel, very informative. But if you call them, they're not hard sell. They'll just talk to you about what's best for you and what the market's doing, and they can really help guide you into maybe putting some gold and silver back to protect your wealth. And again, forgot the link, but just tell them Suits sent you, and they'll be really nice to you. All right. Big thanks to Sarah Mack for getting all the questions and setting everything up for us. Guys, as the holiday season approaches, we want to be joyous. We want to have a celebration. We want to celebrate the birth of Christ. If you're Jewish, you want to celebrate, of course, Hanukkah is happening, right? But we want to celebrate and enjoy family and reflect on our lives. But the one thing we don't want to do is to be ruining our lives or running for our lives. So have the tools, be prepared while you're out there, and then just have a Merry Christmas. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.